Okay, we're rolling.
Alrighty, it's 5 o'clock. Welcome everybody. This is a social equity networking event geared towards compliant packaging and how to navigate our rules, our guidance, how to source compliant packaging. My name is Kyle Harris. I'm one of the commissioners here at the CCB. We care a lot about packaging, I think, as most folks know, as it relates to how a cannabis product is packaged, and I want to go over a lot of that. With Nellie and I today is Nick Smith, who you see on your screen from Emerald Visions. Nick's going to share his packaging journey and procurement process once we kind of set the table a little bit, because I know Nick's up to some really cool things up there in the islands with how his packaging journey's gone and has found a lot of success in some of the plastic alternative. And I know that you really like the plastic alternatives that you've been able to find, Nick. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Nellie, just so you and I are clear to the folks that are listening, the chat function, I believe, is open. So if you have questions, feel free to drop those questions into the chat. After I kind of do my spiel and Nick shares his journey, there'll be times for folks to kind of unmute themselves and ask questions about compliant packaging.
Yeah, and I will say also very quickly, this is a really great opportunity for folks to use the chat to connect among themselves. Also, like what plastic-free alternatives have you found that have worked really well for you, and and all of that. So this is also not just an opportunity for you to ask questions, but for you to connect with fellow licensees as well.
Nellie, I'm not because I'm using our link. I don't know if I'm going to be able to see chat questions as they pop up. So just let me know and stop me if there's one that's pressing that I should answer that kind of fits the point of which I'm going through the explanation of what we're up to over here.
Sounds good.
All righty, 1 second. Okay, so I want to start with just the language that's actually in our rules. And this is found in Rule 2. It's 2.2.9b. And this rule, which we received public comment on, has gone through the entire Administrative Procedures Act process here in Vermont. And it's been in our rules for almost a year at this point. It says packaging that is intended for consumer purchase at a retail locations shall be reusable and shall not be plastic. And I wanted to make sure everybody here is aware of that specific sentence that's in our rules, because there's two big things to note here. 1, reusable, and 2, shall not be plastic. I want to move to our guidance document where we offer some definitions. Our definitions are also in this rule, but I'm just going to move to our guidance document if I can find the right screen. We're actually in the process right now of updating our packaging guidance document. This is the first time the public has seen it. But I don't want folks to panic at the update. The update is more procedural than anything else. And it's going to be how can folks continue to submit. The only changes are how folks are going to be able to continue to submit a waiver to the packaging process. And I'll get there. So, just as a brief introduction, we understand that this is, challenging for some, and we're willing to work with folks and kind of steer people in directions that we think, truly make sense for the state of Vermont and how our waste systems in the state of Vermont function. So, as a general, understanding, again, packaging that is intended for consumer purchase at a retail location shall be reusable and shall not be plastic. Examples of this are glass, tin, cardboard, and bamboo. I know, again, and Nick, I want you to kind of point to how you made decisions when we kind of get there, because I've heard, cardboard kind of dries out my flour. So people are figuring out what works for them, what doesn't work for them. A little bit of it is trial and error, and I know word of mouth spreads really quickly once somebody finds something that seems to work for them. When we get to definitions, well, I guess briefly, consumer packaging for cannabis must be child deterrent, and consumer packaging for cannabis products must be opaque and child resistant. And I think this is a very, very fine point on how we regulate packaging in the state of Vermont, because we are fortunate to be one of 2 states in the entire country in every single adult use market that does not require child resistant packaging for flower. It is the state of Vermont and the state of Oregon. And I think, if we think about, reduce, reuse, recycle, those common narratives around, environmentally forward practices that we all learned in middle school, we can really make a dent in a lot of the waste that's generated from a cannabis perspective through reuse. One of the biggest challenges that other adult use markets like Colorado, and my conversations with both regulators and folks on the industry side of the equation who want to do more with sustainable packaging, who want to be able to bring a jar back to a retail establishment and have somebody fill a jar that they've already used to refill that jar, is this child resistant component. Because oftentimes when you're sanitizing or putting a child resistant lid, because that child resistance is a federal standard and there's a specific locking mechanism on that lid that is certified by a federal certification body. If you put that child resistant lid under high heat, high sanitation, high pressure, and like an industrial dishwasher, it does not maintain that child resistance beyond its initial use. So other states haven't been successful in a reuse program almost because of the child resistant packaging. We were able to convince our legislature before our market even launched to kind of revisit this language and moved away from child resistant for flower. I think everybody here likely knows that because flower has not been decarboxylated, if you or I or a 2-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 10-year-old or an 80-year-old eats cannabis flower, there's not going to be any psychoactive effect that's felt by that person that eats it. Now, you eat grass, you eat anything that, otherwise isn't marketed for an ingestion, you might want to, contact, poison control or something like that, just in case you feel like you ate something that, isn't easily digestible, but there's not going to be any psychoactive effect there. So child deterrent packaging is very important. Cannabis products, however, still need child resistant packaging, and that's important because those products have been decarboxylated. So if a child does get their hands on gummies or other products, that edible products, they're going to feel that psychoactive effect, of course. Plastic here, and this is the same for the most part language that's found as the definition of plastic in Vermont's single-use plastic ban. You might notice if you go to a grocery store, they don't offer you plastic bags in Vermont. This concept is not foreign to the state of Vermont. I know it's a little foreign to the cannabis industry, but a lot of the things that we're trying to do are in line with the values that the greater legislative body and a lot of the citizens around the state feel in an attempt to move away from plastic. So plastic means a synthetic material made from linking monomers through a chemical reaction to create a polymer chain that can be molded or extruded at high heat into various solid forms that retain their defined shapes during their life cycle and after disposal, including derived from petroleum or a biologically based polymer such as corn or other plant resources. I think it's important to kind of point this definition out because I get asked quite frequently, why bioplastics? Why hemp plastics? Why are you putting all of these forward-thinking plastic polymers into the same, conversation as a petroleum-based single-use plastic? And that's because our waste streams in Vermont have not caught up to the environmental benefit that a lot of these biopolymers really generate. So if we look up here at the top of this page, where I'm highlighting here, such as corn or other plant sources. One of the most common and then one of the first biopolymers to really exist is a biopolymer called polylactic acid, or PLA. And PLA is a corn-based biopolymer, but for it to actually break down on a timescale that's faster than a single-use petroleum-based plastic, it needs an industrial compost setting. And currently, right now, and industrial composters learn this. There's about 11 of them, 9 or 11, I think, around the state. I can't remember what the exact number is off the top of my head. Through the plastic bag ban, that you can still get some bags that are biologically based. Especially, I think there's certain exemptions for, like, if you're in your fruit and veggie aisle at a grocery store, those types of bags. Not the bags you get at the point of purchase, but the bags that you put your fruits in. Industrial composters kind of, put up a red flag saying, hey, our systems right now are not tailored to accept this much bioplastic into our facilities. And that's because there's a number of different biopolymers. PLA is only one of them. They kind of are working their way towards coalescing around a couple major biopolymers that really do well under composting conditions on a similar time frame. Some take 60 days to break down, some takes 45, some take 75. Think about it, how we flower cannabis, products. They're all, operating just a little bit different. And, because of that, an industrial composting facility wants consistency because they need to turn that product back into a sellable product. So you'll see, if you look at, what we've really sought to accomplish with some of our plastic waivers, there's not any products that are necessarily needed to be put into an industrial compost facility, because if they end up in a landfill, they're going to function the same as a petroleum-based product. So we're in a state with better industrial composting infrastructure. I think this specific conversation may look a little bit different, and we may be able to move in that direction. It's also understanding that we have one landfill in Vermont. I'm sure everybody here understands that we have one landfill in Vermont. You tell that to somebody in a different state, their kind of jaw hits the floor. It's absolutely fascinating that there is one landfill that's accepting the entire state's solid waste. And not only that landfill has an expiration date. I think it's March 31st, 2025, which is less than 2 years away. There's no defined plans to expand that landfill or create a new landfill. And, I do not necessarily think, in my conversations with the Department of Environmental Conservation, think it's best to kind of overload that landfill with single-use plastics, especially with microplastic, PFAS contamination and the such, really dominating a lot of the headlines in Vermont from an environmental waste issue perspective. So we've tried to tailor, the no child resistant and reusable packaging and marry that with the waste systems that we've kind of got right now in Vermont to kind of start to move in a direction where our waste systems can actually accept better quality packaging products like glass and metal, so on and so forth. I know I'm rambling a lot. I'm almost done, and then I'm going to turn it over to Nick to kind of clue everybody in here on his journey. I want to go over a couple more documents. Oh, one more thing that I wanted to mention on this. So you might find on our website, if you've navigated our website, we did have a packaging waiver process that's different from our rules waiver process. And that packaging waiver process was set up before our market even launched, because we recognized at that point in time, we didn't know where plastic would be truly necessary to meet the demands of all four corners of our market. And that waiver was set up understanding that we quite frankly didn't know, and we were making decisions and allowing people to come forward and say, hey, I have this certain product, it needs it. Achieving zero plastic in a child resistant product setting is a lot more difficult, since most child resistant locking mechanisms do have a degree of plastic in them. But now that we've kind of, canvassed this market over the last 6 to 8 months, we think we have a good understanding of where those needs truly are, not wants, but needs. We're pulling back that plastic waiver specific submission portal. We're going to ask people, and that's right here, we're going to ask people to use our rules waiver. There still might be specialty products that people come out with that are different and might need a waiver because there's no working way around it. And whether it's and we can look at our actual waiver webpage, whether it's a plunger for like RSO for medical patients, or transdermal patches. They typically come in like a plastic little baggie. There's not really any other way to package those. So we acknowledge if it's going to keep a product off the shelf, we will take it seriously and look to make a decision. But we think we're pretty confident in our understanding of the true needs of the market. So moving forward, that packaging waiver portal is going to be taken down. There's still an opportunity to submit a waiver before everybody pauses. It's just going to be through our rule waiver process, and that process can also be found on our website. So one more document, Nick, that I want to review, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. This is a good visual of some of the stuff that I've reviewed. The difference between cannabis and cannabis products, where child deterrent language is needed where child deterrent packaging is needed versus child resistance. Child resistance, of course, is a federally defined term. I've discussed that. Child deterrent is honestly, made up by our legislature to kind of give it still something that would, not be super easy for kids to get into. So it needs to be tear resistant. I know a lot of folks that are using screw top lids are putting tape over that to just give it a little bit of, bite to it, and to further discourage a child from accessing the contents. And then very quickly, our approved packaging waivers can be found on our website. If something is approved, everybody in the entire industry can use it, not just the person who submitted the waiver. So we've made accommodations for rubber plastic gaskets, because we want to make sure that your product can carry its freshness from the point at which you package it all the way to the point where a consumer does buy it. Plastic in vape cartridges, it's kind of hard to work around that. Tincture dropper tops. Does anybody know an alternative to rubber tincture rubber tops? If you do, let me know. I'd love to explore that. And again, foam pressure seal or bottle cap liners, we want folks to be able to utilize, shelf life stability and quality control, recognizing that plastic does that for a majority of, packaging of flour across the country. But I think what we've seen is there are alternatives to that. But, we do need to make sure we can still maintain that freshness. Plastic push buttons for child resistance. This is like, let's say you have a vape cart in a cardboard box. It has a little plastic button that's child resistant. That's okay. I mentioned transdermal patches down here. Lids for beverages. That's something that's been really challenging for a lot of folks to figure out, especially if you have multi-servings in that, in that beverage, meaning more than 5 milligrams of THC. And I do know that there is a product that will be utilized moving forward for cans that can reseal itself and retain that child resistance for multiple times. Liquids need to maintain that plastic or that child resistance for as many servings as is in the package. It's not just, you can't have 10 milligrams or 10 milligrams in a drink and pop the top once, because that's more than 2 serving or more than 1 serving. And, we've run into issues with our statutes if we allow that to happen in our market. We also have some stuff, granted specific products, not general ones, meaning, these are general. So you can really source your transdermal patch from anywhere. You can source your rubber or plastic dropper top from anywhere. I don't care what the company is. It doesn't, I'm splitting hairs and asking you to buy a specific dropper top. But as we talk about tops and lids for flour and products, recognizing there's a lot of different packaging options and companies out there that are operating in this space. And Nick's going to talk a little bit more about that for us. Some are doing things in a sustainable way. Some are your wholesale, just trying to turn a profit oriented businesses. And I think, it aligns with our values and everybody's values here to kind of move us in a sustainable direction. So You know, the Elevate stand-up pouches, you know, we gave that waiver to flower products in year one. We're gonna reconsider that waiver after September to see if the market still truly needs that, because as we move into year two, we really want to further encourage reuse programs, and we're working through some of the kinks to provide better guidance on how retailers can participate there, not only in the deli style bulk sale side of their, you know, their retail establishment, which is where a lot of folks are doing reuse programs now. But how can we encourage that from the cultivator all the way through the end of our supply chain? So we're working on that. I think, you know, bags for flour are going to potentially, you know, not be allowed after September. We're kind of gathering information and are going to make a decision at some point. Humidico lids, I understand Humidico lids have been a point of frustration for some folks. You know, I really don't want to have that dominate our conversation today. I want to move beyond that. They are still allowed for cannabis products. I do think that they have a lot of value. Their specific biopolymer can degrade in a landfill without that need for industrial composting, as I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation. When we looked at, we had initially allowed that waiver for just cannabis products. And through the product registration process, we saw how many folks were using it for flour. And when 65 to 75% of the market is using a rule waiver, it becomes the rule, not the exception. And, you know, we wanted to ask people to off ramp and find other alternatives. And I'm very thankful that it seems most people have been able to do that. You know, there is a bag option for products. Again, plastic and child resistance. It's a little bit harder to achieve zero plastic with no when child resistance is necessary. The Santa screw top lid, this 38-400 size is the only size available, and that size is specifically for your dabbable products. It's like those glass you know, jars that are designed specifically for a dabbable oil. There's not a lot of good sustainable packaging options other than this lid. And so, you know, we've allowed folks to use that lid. And so, yeah, you know, this and then this is for drinks. It's a lid for a single serving drink. And again, we're working through with some folks in the community options for multi-serving beverages and how you can do that compliantly. So that's the boring regulatory spiel. You know, I'm going to turn it over to Nick and kind of see what questions I can answer that may have come through our chat function, Nelly. If you need my help there, while Nick kind of explains to us his packaging journey. So welcome, Nick. Emerald Visions. You may see his products in stores. You may know him personally. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Kyle. I'm excited to be here. So yeah, when we started getting into this whole industry, we were looking for a more high-end looking package option. So I have a former colleague of mine who is now he works as a bud tender in the state of Washington, and so I started asking him kind of what the more high-end or the top quality cultivators were using for packaging, and most of them were not using like Mylar bags or anything, or the ones that there was like this real big product differentiation when people use something other than Mylar. And just it's nice to have something more reusable or recyclable, if not reusable. So I don't know, I started talking to him. There was like cool bamboo options. There's like a wax line cardboard that were pretty cool. And then we kind of were looking at glass jars. So what we settled on was a bamboo lid glass jar. It just has the rubber gasket that has that categorical exemption. So then actually after we were really hoping that there would be that exemption for that. And then during one CCB meeting, you, Kyle, you posted that that was an option. So that was exciting that it kind of let us know that we could go forward with that. So from there, we worked with Canna Planners, who is this business out of Vermont who does kind of like design, and they designed our label for us. And then we used another Vermont company, Creative Labeling of Vermont. They did all of our stickers, so we had that done locally. And I actually brought a jar in just to show people. Let's see. So it's a little glass jar and a bamboo lid with a rubber gasket, and so this works really well. We're starting to put some little Bovita packs to maintain freshness, just to make sure everything, if someone buys it, then like 3 months later wants to still have the not smoke it all right off, then we'll maintain freshness. So back to our packaging journey. We like these packages a lot, and we're gonna keep them in our product line just for like special releases. But after doing 3 or 4 crops now, we found that it does take a little extra time, like unboxing and putting the stickers on. So we found even what we think is an even cooler option, where we found through a company called Tin Canna, they have like these metal containers that are actually even child-proof. So it's like true child-proof. So you just push down and it unlocks it, and then has a little seal. And what we really like about these is they'll actually they'll custom direct print onto them, so it'll save a lot of labor and just putting the stickers on, and we won't have that sticker expense either. They're fully recyclable, reusable, so we'll be going forward with these. They'll just be like, they'll even emboss the top, the sides, so really good option for people that are looking for something that's compliant. And the jars are like $1.20, $1.30 a piece, somewhere in between that, and these tin ones actually even came in under that. So depending on what you want, the jars look really nice. When we first had our product hit the shelves, we were just like inundated with people. They were raving about our flour, and then it was actually surprising that just as many people were raving about our packaging. So I mean, we wanted to do it anyway, but so just for people to remember, if like these regulations put in place by the CCB, they could even be in your best interest for that reason. It gives you an even more high-end looking product, and if you do it right, people will really notice, and it'll make it'll accentuate the quality of your product. Like we've actually even talked with a local beekeeper that also does candles and all sorts of different things. We may make like a refill kit for these jars, where just like a refill, not as in cannabis, but just like have candles that fit right in there, just for like kind of thinking outside of the box ways of reusing these. In addition to that, the better options, actually, some retailers will collect all these jars from consumers, and then we've even had some of the retailers offer to give them back to us, which is great. Then we can just sterilize them, change the stickers out, and reuse them. And when we first got them, we were unsure of how strong they'd be, but we've dropped these things on the concrete, and most of the time they just bounce. And I'm not saying anyone should try, but they're a little more durable than you'd think. But I don't know, on top of that, like these tin cans are really cool just for like how durable they are. So there's a lot of different options. There's a company called Paper Tube Company that picture like I don't know, like Breyer's ice cream, you know, like Ben and Jerry's. They have the wax coated container cardboard, and so they make those in all different sizes for like doob tubes, for vape carts, level inserts that you can put a vape cart in. So yeah, you can put your flour in there. It is wax lined with a nice airtight seal. You can just put a little sticker around the seal, and that would be compliant, I believe. There's another company that actually we saw at NECAN last weekend. They're called Contempo. They have a bunch of glass products, paper products, and tin products, which I think are even cooler. And then let's see, brought a couple of examples just to show people. This company right here, Safely Lock, I think they even advertise on their website that like a lot of their stuff is Vermont CCB compliant, but it's kind of got like a little locking mechanism. You press there, you can put, I don't know, pre-rolls in there. There's like a little seal that retains freshness. So this one's cool. It's not only child proof, but I don't know, they'll custom print right on it, saving you labor expenses and putting stickers on, and just everything's ready to go. So I think we found that like with not growing pains too much, but just like trying to streamline things and find the bottleneck, that we can, I don't know, use these reusable packaging options to our advantage, where like, I don't know, some of the cheaper products, Mylar bags, they may custom print them, but it really doesn't look very high end. And then also here's another thing from the Tin Canna. These would be good for like pre-rolls. You just push down, twist, and then they even have this little wax seal that, or sorry, not wax. It's like a foil seal, retains freshness. So that's another cool one. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Nick, can I interrupt you for just 1 second? Because one of the issues that kind of straddles what we consider cannabis flower and what we consider cannabis product, and how we define things here is an infused joint. And a lot of folks have asked, okay, because this is infused, and again, an infused joint could mean a couple different things. but they would need to be child resistant depending on what it is, because it is infused with some cannabis product, right? A lot of folks have had trouble finding something that would work a lot, because a lot of the noob tubes that we see now are just like the screw metal tops or the cork tops. What Nick just
Yeah,
showed
like
you,
that.
yeah. But if you
And
pull back up that
and
Tincana one, that is child resistant. Those would
yeah,
be great to use if you want to produce an infused joint, because it does have a child safety locking mechanism. So sorry to interrupt you, but a lot of folks have been unable to find that. And so I wanted to make sure that folks know that there are options out there. And I do see some questions. Have we put together, a list of compliant options? I think one of the things, that I'd love to do at some point is put together that big list. I think I balance that with not steering people towards a specific company all too often, unless they're doing something that's light years better than anything else. So yeah, I want to make sure folks, understand that option is out there. Tincana, there's a couple other, companies that I know doing it, but Tincana, I think, is a really cool company with a really good value set, and those could easily be reusable.
yeah, and then also some other options I wanted to share with people. There's a website or a company called Green Tech Packaging. That's where we buy our glass jars from, and they sell them in all quantities. You do get a better deal when you buy more. Then another alternative to that's Flower Power Packaging. So all of these different websites and companies are just different options for you to go there and look if you're struggling to find something. There's tons of options. And I mean, I think that really what started our packaging, like our search, like when we were looking for something that would be compliant, not plastic, it's pretty simple. You just type in like, I don't know, glass cannabis packaging, and then click on images for Google, and you'll see a million options like backwoods blunts. They've been using glass jars with cork lids like this for years, and they dip them in wax. So actually, that's what we're going to be doing for a little while, at least for our pre-rolls. It'll be just these little vials, and then they'll have 9 dog walker pre-rolls dipped in wax. That'll be the child deterrent. And yeah, there's a bunch of different cool options that can really make your product look high end. But yeah, one of the big things about this, if you go with a company that will direct print on your packaging, can save you a ton of time and labor. And just on stickers, all this stuff, it's great, and still get that high end look.
Nick, could you put, this is Nelly. Could you put
Yeah,
some of these packaging options that you've listed? Could you put them in the chat at some point?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I think
Nick, if you,
just save folks furiously writing them down.
Yeah,
no,
definitely.
Nick, why don't I kind of take the reins back and explain how we internally make packaging decisions once we've kind of been connected through a packaging waiver submission to a packaging company? Because I do spend, not it's certainly not my full-time job, which is regulating the cannabis market. But I do talk to a lot of packaging companies who are very curious about what Vermont is up to. And how and if their packaging company makes sense for the state of Vermont and what we're trying to pull off here. So if you submit a packaging waiver or what will be a rules waiver with the website or the packaging company that you want to use, what we do, and we have an internal sustainability team that Vern and I help run along with members of our licensing and compliance teams. We do our due diligence. We will look beyond the marketing that this company is putting out there. There are so many things that look like cardboard that are plastic. There are so many things that say they're hemp plastic, but they're often only 15 to 20% made from hemp, and the rest is made from a petroleum-based plastic. We dig into those specifications. We look at life cycle analysis if we can get them. We look at all of that scientific data that's given to us. I hold conversations and meetings with specific packaging companies to kind of understand what the product is, so on and so forth. And then we take a lot of information and make determinations as a sustainability committee on whether or not it makes sense for us to invite into the Vermont marketplace. And again, oftentimes that's driven by the fact that we don't have industrial compost facilities willing to accept any bioplastics. Recycling is really challenging for a number of different reasons, because I get asked all the time, why can't you recycle this plastic? And one, most of Vermont's plastic, or excuse me, most of Vermont's recycled material is shipped out of state, meaning those haulers, those solid waste districts that are accepting these recycled products are moving things to Massachusetts or New York. And if there is too much cannabis residue in there, theoretically, they could be at risk for transporting across state lines, given the federal status of cannabis. Also, to me, and I don't want to, beat or depress people, but only 6% of the world's recycling material is actually, in fact, recycled. So if we can kind of figure out alternatives to, clogging that recycling supply chain, understand that most things end up in a landfill and work backwards from there. That's one of the main drivers in a lot of our decision making is, okay, it's going to end up in a landfill. What's going to happen from there? Floor is yours, Nick.
I just wanted to say, so during college, or while I was in college, we learned that actually a lot of products going to be recycled, or even it's like trash barges that go out to the ocean to bring it to some like hypothetical management or waste management location, they actually will just dump it right in the ocean. So if anyone here has never heard of the North Pacific Gyre, they should check it out. It's like twice the size of Texas, and that's all just microplastics and larger plastics. I think they said there's like 10 million Taco Bell bags and 5 million rubber duckies are two actual statistics of what's in the North Pacific Gyre, as well as tons of other trash that's just been dumped out there. So once the Coventry dump or landfill is closed down, it's really not out of the question if they don't renew their license, or that we may be shipping out of state, and then that trash may be going out to sea, hypothetically going to like India or who knows where, to some dump that they say they're bringing it to, and just gets dumped right out in the ocean. So that was all I had to say about that.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. And I think your comments kind of seg me into one more question that I contemplate a lot as somebody with an environmental background and considers myself, part of the environmental community. I think we're all global citizens. We're also citizens of the great state of Vermont. So, Nick referenced ocean plastic, and a lot of sustainable packaging companies are moving, in a direction of, recycling or reusing ocean plastic and using that in cannabis packaging, which, it's actually really fascinating if you kind of dig into the details. A lot of that recycled ocean plastic is actually tracked from where it is to your doorstep, similar to our inventory tracking controls, whether that's here or in any state that has an adult use program. The environmental philosophical question that I ask myself, and I know we ask ourselves internally at the CCB, recognizing what Nick just said, does the world's ocean plastic belong in Vermont's one landfill with no concrete plans beyond 2 years from now? I haven't arrived at a good answer, whether or not that makes sense. I want it out of the ocean, but does it belong in Vermont? I don't necessarily know that I have a fully fleshed thought on that, and that's really why we haven't really moved in that direction as a state, recognizing that that's a good solution for other states given their waste infrastructure and how they handled recycled materials. So I get asked that question a lot, both from packaging companies around, reused plastic from the ocean, and as they try and do things in a sustainable way, I think that there is a place for it. I just don't know that place is in Vermont. Go for it, Nick. And then Nick, after your comments, because we're at 5:40, I know there's not a whole lot of folks with us today, but I did want to give anybody an opportunity to unmute themselves and ask questions, unless all of their questions have been answered in the chat.
Yeah. So I'm actually I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to the ocean plastic thing. So while I did consider and actually doing a product waiver form for a couple of ocean plastic products, but as we talked to multiple companies making packaging with recycled ocean plastics, seemed as though there was like this big gap on how much of the percent of that product was new plastic versus recycled ocean plastic. So it's kind of this hype word, made with recycled ocean plastic, where they can get away with saying that there's even like 5 or 10% of the plastic is just recycled ocean plastic, where I don't know, it may make you think it's 100, but you can't really make brand new packaging with just recycled ocean plastic. So that's another thing that's, I don't know, a little deceiving. But yeah, I'll give it back to
Yeah.
you, Kyle. And
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. If you see something that says it's called hemp plastic, they're taking the hurd from the stalk and they're using that hurd and turning it into a plastic. But oftentimes that plastic can't stand on its own. They need to blend it with a more, structurally sound bioplastic or a traditional petroleum-based plastic. So you see something marketed as hemp plastic, they probably do have a degree of hemp in there, but it's often only 10 to 15%. I've seen up to 20%. There's also other things that some folks are doing. These drop-in organic additives that eat the petroleum-based plastic very, very quickly. And there's a lot of sustainable packaging folks around the country that are not in favor of that, because what you're doing is, when a petroleum-based, or when any plastic is produced, you're capturing certain greenhouse gases in that product. There's greenhouse gases being released in the production of that product, but you're holding, whether it's petroleum-based or a bio-based product, you're holding greenhouse gases in that product, and then it degrades either slowly over time if it's petroleum-based plastic, or in a landfill, or excuse me, in an industrial compost setting, it's in an aerated pile. But those organic additives eating that plastic are still releasing volatile greenhouse gases into the atmosphere a lot faster than a lot of our greenhouse gas modeling understanding, really accounts for. So, if a plastic is degrading in a landfill sitting there, it's taking a couple hundred years, that versus, only a couple or months, you're putting a lot more greenhouse gases more quickly into the atmosphere than really what we're looking to do. So oftentimes it exacerbates other problems, even though you're trying to solve that plastic breaking down a little bit more quickly. So environmental policy is really challenging. You're trying to make a decision and save the entire planet. And, oftentimes you fiddle with one thing and you cause problems elsewhere. But I'm gonna get off my non-plastic soapbox. I wanted to open it up to the folks that have been listening this whole time that may have not had a question answered, or, have a general comment, around compliant packaging. If anybody else has any success stories, any other, packaging that they really have found to work for them and they find very, useful and are fond of, please don't hesitate to share it for everybody else.
I think let's handle this like we do with our standard board meetings. If you have a question or a comment or a success story you'd like to share, just raise your virtual hand and we'll call on you. I don't actually see any phones joined right now, so we won't need to turn to phones. But again, just raise your virtual hand if you have a question, and we'll go from there.
Nick, maybe we answered all of everybody's questions. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think one of my main goals today was hoping folks understand that we are not doing this willy-nilly and there is a method to our madness. If we overview Vermont's aging waste infrastructure and how sustainable packaging is moving forward, I can share that, while folks contemplate whether or not they have questions, other states are watching what we're doing. I chair the Environmental and Energy Subcommittee for the Cannabis Regulators Association. States like New York, New Mexico, Colorado, they're looking at what we're doing and they're seeing if this can work. This no plastic packaging can work. Does child deterrent or no child resistant packaging for flour? Does it make sense? Because they want to take this back and talk to their legislatures and see if they can make a difference too. Vermont, I'm a firm believer that small states are you know, the experimental labs for cool policy oriented concepts. It'll take some of the larger states to kind of move in this direction to kind of tell, you know, packaging companies what needs to happen, where we can really make a difference. And I do see a lot of states looking at what we're doing with very close attention to detail.
All right, there have been a couple questions in the chat, but we've sort of answered them as we've gone along.
Yeah, is it Gabri? I want to make sure I say your name correctly. That clarification is correct. Pre-rolls and flour need to be child deterrent. Products need to be child resistant. You have that correct. There is a question from HMH, where are people getting their labels printed? Looks like Ashley may have answered that. You know, Nick, I think you know, appreciate you tag teaming this. But I do know if you have any other thoughts on you know, labeling, Nick, feel free to share them, because, you know, that's not my expertise. And I know you as an entrepreneur have figured out those.
Oh yeah, another thing that, so for our labels, we bought this machine that's called the Primera AP360, and it every time we post a video of it on our Instagram, I think it's one of our most viewed videos. So actually, like, since we started using it and people have been seeing us use it, we've, I think, gotten 3 to probably 5 different retail or cultivators. They've also bought this. It makes it so there's, when you put the labels on you, this is how Clove sends it to you. It's like ready to go. You throw it right on the spool and you can pretty much do a jar like in, I don't know, half a second. It's really fast, maybe a full second, but so you don't have to line up the stickers. So that's one little trick we found that was very helpful, is just buy a machine that kind of helps you do this all faster and more precise, so that you don't have to be OCD about getting that sticker lined up perfectly. It takes care of it for you with its guides and just how it's designed. So that could be useful for retailers doing their own in-house packaging with the deli style, which I think that's a really cool thing with, like, I don't know, Ratu's dispensary down in Wilmington. They, I think, do almost exclusively deli style. And I think as much as we do just do pre-packs, we do that not because we're against deli style. We just kind of, for brand recognition is why we've been doing it. But
Yep.
I mean, that's really the end all be all of the reusable packaging. So just sterilizing the packaging, and I don't know, it'd probably be best just to take in the used container, then give them a new one, then sanitize it after, kind of in the back of the house. So yeah, I think a lot of different dispensaries are doing that, and that's a great option for them. And it's really what the rules are, kind of the ultimate
Thanks, Nick.
goal for them, I'd say. Thank you.
Yeah.
We do have one person who's raised their hand. Sweet Green Supply, you're up.
Hey, thanks. I have a question about the labeling, and has legislature gotten the verbiage redone yet so that we can print new labels that aren't obsolete?
Yeah, great question. So we're in the process. It's not the legislature. It's the Cannabis Control Board. We're in the process of updating our rules, but those rules are still proposed rules. There is a proposed update to the warnings on, you know, labels, but because those rules have not been finalized yet, even one word could still change as we look at public comments around those warning signs. They're not final yet, so I wouldn't move in that direction quite yet, only because a simple word could change, and then you got to print a whole new batch of labels.
Okay.
So hang tight, we'll get there.
Okay, so further on that subject, on the verbiage, is it okay if we put a QR splat on our packaging, on our label, and just have it reference out to a website? So there's your warning.
No, the warning itself needs to be on the package. You can use a QR code for your COAs, you know, for potency, pesticide testing, pathogen testing, so on and so forth. But that label is required, along with the warning symbol, to be on every packaged product.
Yeah, and I'll also just further add to that. You know, we are very aware that there are people out there who are investing a significant amount of money in labels with the currently compliant warning label on that. So, you know, we will give it's TBD the form in which this will take, but we do want to make sure that we give folks some sort of way to use up their current stock of compliant labels. We don't want folks to be going out of business because they invested, you know, sometimes 5 figures worth of money on one set of compliance labels, and then, you know, we changed the warning label. So we're aware that this is an issue, and we'll work with folks to make sure that you can stay compliant throughout.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So
We'll
if we
work-
order a bunch and we have them in stock, or you're not going to make us change just because of word change. We were able to use our existing inventory and use it up before.
No. Let's be clear. I think what Nelly was insinuating was, let's say I don't know how many, you know, what order quantity you've ordered of compliant labels and packaging material right now. Let's say you have 5,000 left that you haven't used, and the rules are going to change. We're going to allow you to exist that backlog or that supply of stuff that you currently have with the current warning label on that. I wouldn't recommend anticipating what that new warning label is going to look like until it's actually been finalized by the Cannabis Control Board. Because it could be one word, it could be a whole sentence, it could be a number of things as we kind of move towards finalizing that rule. So what Nelly was trying to say was, don't worry about your existing supply. If that verbiage does get changed, we'll allow you to use your current stuff, but just hang tight on the new stuff. I know you want to anticipate what's going to happen and prepare yourself, but I don't want to put you in a position where you know, you take one wrong step and you're out a couple $1,000s, if not more.
Okay, thank you for your concern.
You're very welcome.
Talk later.
Any other questions, comments? Feel free to raise your virtual hand. If there aren't any, you know, Nick, I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate everybody's, you know, time today. It's a beautiful evening out there. I know I'm itching to get outside. You know, I'm more than happy to stick around until 6. I'm also happy to kind of close this thing down about 7 minutes, 6 minutes early. And I thank everybody for, you know, their participation today, their comments, their questions. I think what we're doing in the packaging space here is very unique. It embodies a lot of what Vermont values. I think it's going to really prepare us to be the craft players in a federal market. And folks are paying attention to what we're doing. That much I can guarantee you through my conversations with packaging companies and other regulators. They want to know if we can be successful, and it's not, I've said this many times, it's not us asking you to do something, it's you buying in and figuring it out. And for that, I am very thankful. So, yeah, thank you, everybody. And if there's no more questions, I hope everybody has a great rest of their evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Sally, I'm cool with ending if you are. Final call for questions.
I've already stopped streaming. I'm going to call it.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Take care, everyone.